So hello everyone and welcome to our virtual presentation and discussion on coping with disaster-related stress during the coronavirus pandemic. I am Yvette Rivers. I am Yale College, actually Grace Hopper, class of 1996. I'm also the president of Yale Club of Washington, DC. And I am a co-leader of the 1stGenYale DC chapter. So this program is hosted by the Yale Club of Washington, DC in partnership with 1stGenYale. I'd like to take a moment to introduce to you Lisa Chapman, who is the leader of the 1stGenYale Shared Interest Group.
Thank you, Yvette. Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa Chapman, class of 81 MBA, and it's my honor and privilege to be here tonight with Yvette Rivers and Roni Beth Tower. This is an incredible opportunity for all of us. This has been created by Yvette and Roni Beth, and I can't be more proud of their hard work to put this on today for all of you, and it's my honor to be here as well. So thank you for joining us, and stay tuned. Be sure to join our 1stGenYale closed Facebook group. We have about 1,300 alumni in that group, as well as on Twitter, Instagram. We also have an alumni database via email. So come join us. And if you live in the Washington, DC area, join Yvette, Barb, and the rest of their team.
So without further ado, I would like to introduce Roni Beth Tower. I actually met Roni in New Haven at a 1stGenYale event over the summer. And when I saw that she recently wrote an article on Psychology Today on coping with disaster-related stress, I just thought that it would be very beneficial for Yale alumni to be able to hear about her expertise and her tips. So, you know, I don't know about the rest of you, but I've been with my family, I've been self-isolating for about 6 weeks now. And so this is really timely for me personally, and I'm sure for the rest of you as well. So let me tell you a little bit about Roni Beth. She is a retired research, clinical, and academic psychologist who cross-trained in epidemiology at Yale Medical School. She is the author of a gold medal memoir, Miracle at Midlife, a Transatlantic Romance. And she's also the author of her own blog on Psychology Today entitled Life Refracted. Roni, we are so thankful that you are here with us today and as our speaker. Just want you to know that we appreciate what you've done for us and we're really looking forward to it. So with that, Roni, I'd like to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Yvette. I guess that makes me come up. This is a first for me too. So Yvette, thank you so much for inviting me. And Lise, thank you so much for inviting the 1stGen group and the rest of the Yale alumni. I am absolutely delighted to be back where I got my PhD and when I cross-trained in epidemiology and public health, talking about a topic that's really, really dear to my heart. And this is a time when it's very hard to see the stress of the coronavirus as pure challenge. There are just too many unknowns. It's got too much of an open-ended duration, and it's really complicated. There are stressors that range from the biological to the financial. And let me get set up here. It's going to take a minute. The electronics were a challenge, but what we're going to do today is we're going to start by talking about two models that frame the discussion that I want to talk about. And what I thought might be uniquely useful is for you to explore a little bit your own coping responses, how you uniquely cope. I'm going to say a lot more about that in a minute, but we're going to talk about experiencing stress and do some imagery exercises that aren't always going to be comfortable, but I promise I will leave you, the third one will leave you on a very comfortable note. Then we're going to look at the impact of disaster-related stress on individuals and on relationships because they impact both. And Then we're going to talk about ways to cope, briefly passing over the negative ways and exploring a little bit the positive ways. And then there will be time for questions. Please put thoughts that you have, questions in the chat box. At some point, if I asked you a question, there's a little yes or no at the bottom of the chat box that you can vote, because there are some questions I honestly don't know what the participants in this room are going to be equipped to be doing. And I can tell you right now that teaching virtually is fascinating. It's exciting. I'm really looking forward to doing it, especially for the Red Cross. I teach psychological first aid for them. But it's a little disconcerting because I'm looking into a camera and I can't see your eyes. So help me out if you have something to say. Put it in the chat room. Put it in the chat room. And I'm also a little nervous, so I've got to, let me get this working properly. The first model is something I learned back in 1976 when I began graduate school at Yale in clinical psychology. One of my professors suggested he built off a model proposed in The Conscious Brain by Stephen Rose, and you're going to get the slides, so the references will be available for you. There's a reference list at the end. And the idea is any human experience can be discussed, can be described in at least 7 different language systems. So we can talk about the chemistry and the physics of the human experience, what's happening in the brain, in the heart, in the skin, what's happening in a biological system, in the cardiovascular system, in the neurological system. There's a lot of research going on about that today. Psychologically, social psychologically, what's happening in relationships, culturally, what's happening in the larger frame, and spiritually. Today, we're going to talk about what I was trained in, the psychological level of things, how people think, feel, behave, what those have to do with each other, how learning takes place, and about relationships. Because my early work was on imagery, my later work was all about relationships. And that's what I taught both at Yale in the 80s and at Columbia after my life changed. And I moved back from France, which is what my book is about. It's a transition story. That's what we're going to talk about. But there's a lot of spiritual in it. Luckily, there are some important ideas that came from the spiritual realm that have made it into psychology. I was actually able to do a dissertation on values by the time I got here. But the idea of gratitude, the idea of generosity, grief and death, and how we deal with mourning. This has made it into psychology. These are topics that we can talk about from a psychological perspective right now. So I'm not going to talk about the economic stress that we're going through. It's a bit of a crisis around the world. I'm not going to focus on political systems. I'm not going to focus on the hideous problems around the world. You can open a newspaper and read about them all. I'm going to talk about individual experience, and that brings us to the second model that's really important to me. And come on. And it's a quote from Henry Murray, who was a psychologist at Harvard. I've tweaked it a little bit to change men to people because it affects all people, but all people are in some ways like all other people, like some other people, and like no other people. Now, there are important ways in which we're like all other people. To start, we have a stress response. It's hardwired, it's wired in. When we feel threatened, we It's called the fight or the flight response or the freeze response. And that's what our bodies are primed to do. Shortly thereafter, another Yale, Shelley Taylor, who was one of the founders of health psychology, proposed that there was also a tend and befriend instinct that kicked in. Shelley Taylor proposed her theoretical article way back when. You've got the references for it in the slide pack. But then her students and lots of other people went on to document, yes, there is a tend and befriend instinct that can kick in when there is a crisis, a disaster-related stress, something going on. It is not just the fight, flight, freeze. It can be a compassionate response. It can be one that reaches out to others to care for others. The second universal is caring. Babies come into this world, they need to be cared for, but when we're adults, we have to take care of ourselves. So self-care is another universal that applies in the context of something like a disaster level stress, something that is truly threatening. It isn't just simply a series of challenges, but has as much mystery as this has, and we'll go to that in a couple of minutes. Third, I need my notes because I've never done this and I'm a little nervous. There's a drive system, and the drive system has been documented by psychologists since about 1950. We have a drive for mastery. We have a drive for intrinsic motivation to express what is inside of us. We have a drive to connect to other people. At the level of the group, what is most important today for all of us, what we share in common is we've got a Yale education either behind us or about to be behind us for those who are on the call who are students. And that means something. That's not irrelevant. It means, first of all, we had the persistence and the perseverance to be able to get to Yale in the first place. You can stick with something. Secondly, you're able to learn, and you want to learn. You want to do research. You want to understand. You're curious. You want to master things. Secondly, there are ambient stimuli that we share, which is we are all on this call. We're on this virtual platform. And that means we can't look each other in the eye. We can't reach out and touch each other, nod at each other. We can't have our private conversations, although you can have a private conversation in the chat box. But that's kind of advanced. The third is that people are most affected by the other people they identify with. Now, who you choose to identify with is certainly not limited to education. But you all have at least enough of an identification with Yale that you do consider yourself lifelong Yaleans. I'm very proud to be among you. And I'm very thrilled that I now, because of this, have the opportunity to speak to you about the third level, the level of the individual. You can do the research on the universal level. You want to know about nutrition? You can go online, you can get yourself educated, anything you want to know, you'll be able to figure it out. The same about the group level. Other things you need to know, you're going to be able to learn them. But trained as a clinician, I'm very interested in how we uniquely respond to stress, especially disaster-related stress or something that can lean towards the traumatic. I have a personal interest in this. I've had a long, complicated life, and I had 2 life-threatening experiences as a child. I had a tremendous amount of loss. I had a whole bunch: illness, fear, loss, expectations. I went from fight when I was doing tantrums as a child to fear when I had nightmares as a school child, to deciding that I could freeze, I could just shut those emotions off and just plain conquer the world and control. But I thought I could control more than I could control, and I had to have more trauma or more stress to teach me those lessons late in life. When you've lived a long time, you have time to learn a lot of lessons. But I am guessing that everyone in this chat today, in this room, has had enough stress experience that you'll be able to stick with me in the imagery exercises and tolerate being a little bit uncomfortable so that you can explore what they're like for you. So with that, we get to imagery exercise number 1. I'd like you to sit stably wherever you are. If you're in a chair, put your feet flat on the floor. If you're in a yogi position, sit up straight and take some deep breaths. It can help to close your eyes. Those of you who know how to meditate, please meditate. Just take a deep breath and allow your body to relax. Breathe in, up your legs, through your trunk, into your head, and back down. And allow yourself to remember a time when you were stressed, when you were quite stressed. And allow yourself to remember what that was like. How did that feel in your body? What happened to your cognition? What were the feelings you were feeling? The impulses? What did you want to do? Was your worldview threatened? And come back to the room. Come back to the room. If you want, I'd love if you'd put some of your reactions in the chat box. But the thing about a stress response to a major stressor like the coronavirus, with its all of the things that it has wrought all over our globe, is responses are unique to the individual. They come from our genetics. They come from our genetics, which give us our biology, gives us our temperament, and temperament evolves into personality, which is a style, and some of them really affect this level of things, especially persistence, adaptability, and threshold of reaction. More about that in the next exercise. Some people respond more cognitively. They find it difficult to concentrate, or they find themselves ruminating. They find themselves planning and planning and planning, trying to get a hold of things cognitively.
And Roni Beth, can you see that some of the comments that people are putting in?
I don't see any comments, no.
I can tell you. Someone said, I wanted to fix it. I froze, did not think, left my body, saw myself from above and merely observed with no feelings and no judgment. Someone else said, I recall the physical stress. Oh, so many comments now. They're scrolling in. They're going up here. 1 second.
And that's the point. The point is these are all normal disaster stress responses. There are cognitive ones like splitting your self away from your body. It can be fear, it can be rage. Maybe not with this exercise, with the next one, there are some of you who at one point may want to just make me go away or stop me, or you may want to bolt, you may want to not just freeze, but flee, get out of here. Why is she doing this? I'm doing it to illustrate something. Like this exercise was to illustrate what's your first go-to experience at that level. And it's unique. And because it's unique, in 9/11, when 9/11 happened, I went to a training for all Connecticut mental health people, and they showed us a film on fire. It was like every single person in the room had seen a different movie because we all react so individually. What that means is it's very easy for a shame response to kick in because you think you're alone, but you're not. Everyone is responding. They're just responding in their own way. Very often, people in a family have trouble understanding each other because they don't understand why someone else isn't responding the way they are. They're not responding the same way because they have their own unique response. Let's go to the next one. Now we're going to explore your responses to levels of stimulation. Because one of the most useful ideas I can leave you with are some insights into the way that stimulation regulates the way that we respond. So let's give this one a try. Close your eyes, sit back, take a couple of deep breaths, and imagine yourself in a very comfortable place. Let's make it a room. Imagine yourself in a room you like being, a place you like being. You're very, very comfortable. Take a look around. Imagine looking around and take a look at, is there anybody else in the room? Are there plants? Are there pets? Are you alone? What do you hear? What kinds of sounds are in the room? Are there any smells? Are there any smells in the room? Feel the texture of the chair underneath you. Just feel how good it feels to feel a little bit relaxed in this nice room. Now, open the door and bring in more people. Bring in people. And bring in sound with them. Bring in more colors. Make the colors a little bit lively. And now make the music louder. Make the sounds louder. Bring in sounds that aren't music. Bring in more people. Make it crowded. Make it filled with people. Make the walls covered with all different kinds of things. Make it a very busy space. And see how you feel. See what's happening inside of you as you allow yourself to change in response to what's going on around you. Now change it back. Take the people out. Take the noise out. Take the colors out. Slow it down and go back to baseline, to your happy place. And now we're going to quiet down your happy place. If there are any windows, close the windows. If there are any walls, make them all white. You're in a white box. Any people, any life that had been there, make it go away. Make it very, very quiet. There's nothing but you inside a white, silent box. And take a breath and see how you feel. Now bring yourself slowly back to baseline. Bring the colors back. Bring the window back. Bring anything that was there before back to your comfortable place. You're where you started. You're where you feel safe, comfortable, a little protected. And take a few deep breaths, just breathe it in. The reason we did this, there was a reason we did this. The reason that we did this was because my favorite theory of psychology is an information theory of a man named Sylvan Tompkins. And what he talks about is information having qualities that determine how we feel, and the affects we feel, the feelings we feel, then determine the impulses we have and what we want to do. There are three dimensions that matter. There's novelty, there's complexity, and there's duration. And I don't know of anything more novel than the novel coronavirus. We never heard of anything like it before. The number of unanswered questions are just staggering. So we're all walking around trying to have information, wanting to solve problems. We're problem solvers. We like challenges. And there's so much about this. It is absolutely mysterious at so many different levels, because this is happening at so many different levels. The complexity is mind-boggling. The fact that it is so global, the fact that it's got the incubation period that it can have, that people can seem to not have it's just very, very complicated. And dealing with it is complicated. People are trying to do it, but it's a complicated thing to do. And the biggest one is duration. Duration, we don't know. We don't know how long this is going to last, but it's not going to be quick, and it hasn't been quick already. And the longer that you're in quarantine, the longer that you're in restrictions, the longer that you don't have information, the more likely it is to generate negative emotions and all kinds of painful things that you may need to deal with. So now we go to the impact of stress on an individual. Stress affects your health. You know that, especially prolonged stress. Endurance, your outlook, how positive you stay, or at some point if you're not feeling so positive anymore, and the level of resilience you have, of acceptance, of peace, of flexibility. You can become comfortable with challenges. And it also affects our relationships. And our relationships are really important because, first of all, we're models for other people. I'm willing to bet that a large number of the people who are here today are leaders. And just like parents, just like clergy, just like teachers, just like our amazing health people, they're leaders and people look to them. How are you behaving? How are your responses affecting other people? The ways in which you cope? Well, they are. Ask yourself, what kind of a person do you want to be? What kind of an impact do you want to have on other people? That will have an effect on how you choose to cope, because we do have choice over how we cope. It's not all as determined as it was by our early beliefs. Secondly, emotional contagion is real. There's a huge literature on it. Instead of giving you references from the psych literature and the references, I gave you a link to an 8-minute video called Bodhisattva in Metro. It's of a Buddhist monk who gets on a metro car, and at the 2-minute interval, he begins to laugh. And it is watching these strangers in the metro laugh and laugh and laugh, and watching the evolution of the laughter as the time goes on. It's absolutely marvelous. I really, if you want a smile on your face, my husband printed out the picture of the monk and put him above my computer so that I can see him while I'm doing this and smile. So that's the second one. The third way it affects relationships is it affects the demands that we make of other people. When we are needy, we tend to ask for more of other people. When other people are needy, they tend to ask more of us. And when we're already under stress, what we can give may not be what it always is. We may have some limits to what we can do. At those times, you have to beware the energy vampires, and you have to beware your need to do self-care. We're going there. That's coping skills. And finally, when someone's under a great deal of stress, it's very common for their focus to narrow. And someone who is normally a very generous, outgoing, really wonderful person can just become very, very focused on themselves because they're worried, they're feeling threatened. And the lens closes up, and you may wonder, who is this person? Who is this person becoming? So it can be a real challenge for relationships. So let's go now to a third exercise. And this one, get yourself comfortable. Close your eyes. This one's wonderful for closed eyes. And just ask yourself, if you could go anywhere in the world right now, no constraints. Money's not a constraint, time is not a constraint. You can go with anyone you want, or you can go with no one. It is entirely up to you. Where would you go? Just give yourself, I'm going to give you a full minute to allow yourself to go where you might want to be right now. Right now, this very minute at about 6:06 Eastern Time. And for goodness sakes, put it in the chat room. That's a great idea. Keep on putting them in the chat room. You just identified one of your greatest needs. No, you're not going to be able to be on an island in Greece right now. But if you want to be just laying in the sand, does that tell you that you're tired? You need a rest? Does that tell you that do you want a spa? Do you need some pampering? Do you need to be still? Do you need to be quiet? There were a lot of mountains. Do you need challenge that you can actually conquer? Not all this challenge that we can't conquer. Things that we actually can control, not those things that are out of our control. Do you need community? Are you missing very much people who are important to you? Were you dancing in the arms of my granddaughters? You want that feeling of love. You want that feeling of connection, of belonging, and touch. We want touch. So how do we cope with all these needs that are so wonderful human needs? Coping with stress. Well, there are negative ways to do it. Everybody knows that there's addiction, and whether it's anything from food to solitaire games. They're distractions. They're a way of changing your attention away from where you were. There's withdrawal and avoidance, pretending it's not something that needs to be dealt with at all, and just kind of withdrawing into your own little world. There's denial through going into risky behaviors. Teenagers often do this. They'll react to stress with a lot of risk-taking that's not very bright. Magical thinking, panic buying, hoarding. You've heard of retail therapy. It can get out of hand. When it does, that's a negative way to cope. Other aggression, hurting yourself or someone else. There's a lot of data that in many places in the world, domestic violence is up and child abuse is up since the coronavirus has become a problem. Suicide, I saw an article this morning. Suicide attempts are up and gun sales are way up. Now, guns can be used for aggression. There's blame and projection. Who can you blame it on? Who can you say it was his fault, it was their fault? So you can get angry, but all the way through all these different stressors we're dealing with, and I'm almost done. Then there are the healthy ways. There's the positive coping. The first thing that all the mental health people agree on is limit media. You're starving for information because you want information, because it's all of the confusion of the information that is really generating all this stress. Remember Tompkins and the information theory of stress? Well, there you go. The negative novelty, the complexity, the duration. Limit media, limit it in time, and limit in what you watch or what you read, to make sure that you've curated it and it's reliable. Evaluate the information. Your Yaleys, you can do that. Follow a healthy lifestyle. You can look that up. Eating, nutrition, and sleeping, and exercise, and touch. We need touch, and dancing is a really good way to do that when you can't get it from other people. Those who do yoga, I love yoga because it's touching yourself. It's taking care of yourself. There's do something competent. Do something you're able to control, that you can actually do. Go make dinner. Make a dinner that will please someone that you live with. Use structure and routines to cope. This is one of my favorite, which is figure out what I need to do, break it into small pieces, and string them out so that I'm not going to fail at them. When I realized I was going to be cleaning my house for quite a while, and I'm old. I haven't done that a whole lot lately. I realized I needed to schedule tasks out throughout the week, because otherwise I would always be upset because my house wasn't cared for. Because I'm old and I'm vulnerable, and I don't want other people cleaning my house right now. Accept yourself. Accept that entire range of emotions, and that they're going to come and they're going to go. You went into those rooms. You saw your emotions change when the stimulation increased and when it decreased. Some people are happier until the increase is too great. Other people are happy until it's as it goes down. That's a very individual thing. But know your style and regulate your emotions by respecting them and allowing them. Allow yourself to have all your emotions, the fear and the anger and the rage and the grief. Oh my goodness, there's grief. I will find myself sobbing, and then someone will send me. I have one friend who sends wonderful emails every morning, and there are some things to really laugh at. Then I'll find myself laughing right after I've read these horrific headlines. It's all of who we are. And when we constrain ourselves at one end of the spectrum, we constrain ourselves at the other end, and we don't get to feel the whole humanity, the joy. Stay in your body. Breathe. To stay connected to your body, to allow all those feelings, even the negative ones. Have compassion for yourself and for others. You're only human. These are human natural responses. Give yourself permission for pleasure. If you're able to stay in the moment, and my question, if you want to put a yes or no in the chat box, that'd be great, is how many of you have a practice that includes something like meditation or yoga or regular running, something that takes you inside yourself for reflection or a capacity for reflection regularly?
There's actually a little yes, no. You might see that under your reactions there, and you can click on yes or no, or just put it in the chat box.
And if you do that, if you practice staying in the moment, you will find there is a great deal to find pleasure in. There are so many things to be grateful for, little things that you may not have slowed down enough to notice before. And they make life very rich. They make it very worthwhile. And finally, there's coping by finding meaning. Examine your sense of meaning, of purpose. Why are you here? Why are you on this earth in this lifetime? What is your unique way to be you? And it may be big. There are some people who are here to change the world. Gandhi changed the world. Nelson Mandela changed the world. There are people who are leaders at that level, and there are people here to inspire their family. There are people here, I'm a teacher and a healer, and I'm here to love. That's why I'm on this earth. That's my mission. But it took me half my lifetime to get there. So don't be disappointed if you're not there yet. So that's, I think that's the end of it. Wait a minute, let me share the screen. So the takeaways are: appreciate your skills, appreciate your gifts, appreciate the fact that you can increase your compassion and everything else, your coping skills for yourself, compassion for others. See your old patterns see what they are, and acknowledge possibilities in new ways. Have the courage to explore them. Allow yourself to learn from each other and help each other. Allow yourself to accept the ambiguity and the mystery of it, to acknowledge that there's no absolute safety. There's no real permanence in most things. Most things change, they evolve. Allow yourself, where did I go? But there does remain creativity, perseverance, intelligence. Ask yourself what gifts you have and what is most important to you to develop and to have. And embrace the present moment. It helps you be able to explore meaning and purpose as unique paths for your gifts and for your interests. And at that point, there are gonna be references, but we can go back and have questions.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Roni Beth. That was just terrific. So for this Q&A period, I'm going to do my very best to look at folks who are raising their hands, and there should be down to your left in the toolbar a raise your hand option if you'd like to ask a question. But before we get into that, Lisa, we forgot to tell folks what is 1stGen. Would you could just, someone asked in the chat, what is 1stGen?
I'll be very quick. Yeah, thank you, everybody. 1stGen is an alumni-led support group for alumni who are from first generation or second generation backgrounds and are from low income or underserved environments and family situations. And what we do is we connect and support our fellow 1stGen low income students at Yale, undergrad, graduate, and professional. And we do it in lots of different ways. And we also do it through these webinars. And thank you again, Yvette and Roni Beth, for everything you've done today and also everything you've done in prior from all the other events you've done jointly. But we're here really to make a difference. We're here for impact. We want to share our stories growing up and also going through places like Yale or our undergraduate establishments and Yale's graduate school, how we can make it better, how we can help the next generation be successful, navigate through Yale, navigate through the career world. What do we do? How do we help them explore and find themselves? So we are open, we're broad, we're 3 years old, we're still kind of a startup. So anybody on this webinar who would love to join us, and if you have an idea, we're gonna support you. We will support you in a webinar, we'll support you in an in-person event. We have lots of alumni who are generating programs. So while I may be the orchestra conductor, I'm certainly not alone at all. It's people like Yvette and Roni Beth and many people on this call who make it happen. So come join us any way you'd like to be. And thank you, Yvette, for giving me a shout out to just share our story. And Roni Beth and Yvette and I, we met in 2018 when we had a conference, Blazing the Trail being the first. And we've been fast friends ever since. And it's a way for us as Yalees to connect from undergrad, grad, and professional, all different years, all different backgrounds, but with a common mission and a common purpose to have an impact on Yale and current students and alumni and make a difference and make the world a better place. So
thank you so much, Lisa. Yeah, when she says 1stGen, that means the first in their family to go to college. And not
just Yale, it's any college. It's not Yale, it's any.
Right. Thank you so much, Lisa. So let's get going with these questions. I do see a question from Amaret. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. I'll just read it. This situation has completely changed my worldview. I don't think the world after this will be the same world from my previous life. Any suggestions for coping with such a major change? How to adapt? What can we learn?
Yes. I can talk to that because I had that happen to me where I was fairly young. I was 24 when I hadn't experienced that the bottom fell out. I mean, I really had an illusion that I could control the life that I was going to have. I really believed it, and things happened that made it absolutely clear I was not running the show. There are times we are not running the show. And that was before I went to school as a psychologist. I had to work out, how do you deal with your worldview is not what you thought it was, and it's never going to change, and we don't know how it's going to be, and we don't know what's going to make it be that way. I think the best you can do is take a look at what you do control and what you don't control. And that little piece of it that you might be able to impact, it might be someone you love, your family. It might be something that has something to do with your work or what you were trained to do. It might have something to do with a passion. Break off a little piece of it where you think you might be able to have an impact, and try to see if you can find a stressor that can be turned into a challenge that you can break down into a small piece and try to cope with, and say, it's the Serenity Prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept what I cannot change, the courage to change what I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That was the quote. It's usually attributed to Reinhold Niebuhr, who was one of my professors when I majored in religion at Barnard as an undergraduate. So I've known that a long time, but I didn't live it to my mid-20s. It's very hard to accept that the world will never be the world you knew. And you're going to need to adapt to living in a new world, and you don't know what's going to be required of you. I can promise you one thing, though. It's going to require lifelong learning. And the people who are on this call, you've got a real head start because you know how to learn real well. You're just going to need to keep learning, because there are going to be new things to learn for the new world that we're going to live in when this passes. It will pass. All pandemics have passed. They may become chronic, but there will, at some point, there will be some kind of a way to have a vaccine. There will be some kind of a way to treat it. But there will be tremendous collateral damage that it has caused. Residentially, financially, structurally, in terms of what kinds of governments will we have all over the world. Whole populations are going to be decimated. Who knows?
Roni Beth, we actually have some other good questions here. So someone asked, as a parent, how do you help a child, especially middle schooler, cope with the way their world has been upended, a world which is scarier and more difficult to deal with?
A middle school child, well, the first thing is how you deal with a child depends on the age of the child. You can say something to a child of any age in some kind of intellectually honest form, but you want it to be at a level that they can process the information. So a middle schooler, I've got a slide here. I had some extra slides, and that was it. This is a timeline of the influence of experience. Our experiences, what happens to us, impacts us differently depending on how old we are. And that's because of the development in the brain, and it's because of what we're capable of understanding in different ways. So you have to speak to that level. And a baby's brain, it's mostly unconscious. In Delta, it's imprinting, it's sensory motor understanding. From 2 to 6, there are theta waves, and the unconscious mixes the real and the imagined, and it's the time of magical thinking, of pretend friends. 6 to 12, the brain develops alpha waves and a calm consciousness, and there's able to be some concrete understanding of things. There's a big change at 12 to 22. And that's when we go into the adolescent brain developing data and an ability to reflect. So it really depends where that middle schooler is. These aren't hard and fast numbers. I can't say your child is 12, so X. But developmentally, try to figure out where are they in terms of the way that they understand things, and speak to them at that level. You want to be honest and acknowledge that the world has changed. You don't like it either, and it wasn't anybody's fault, and it just happened, and a lot of people are trying very, very hard to find a cure for the illness. This has happened before. It doesn't happen often. But you will try the best you can to keep them safe. And you understand there will be times when they will feel frightened, when they will feel angry. They will feel angry that they can't be with their friends. They will feel angry. I had a conversation with my 19-year-old granddaughter just yesterday. She realizes that she's not going to go to Barcelona spring of her junior year at college. And I said to her, Barcelona's not going to be what you even thought it was. It's going to take Barcelona a while to figure out what it's going to be. If you want to go there and do repair work. So it depends what level you're speaking at. To a child, you want to be honest. You never want to lie. Don't give misinformation. You need them to trust you, and you need them to trust that you will do the best you possibly can to keep them safe and to help them find ways to find happy moments, and above all, to be in the moment. Dance with them and sing with them. Dancing and singing are two of the mechanisms by which we attune ourselves to each other. If you're not completely social distancing, it's a great way to connect and stay connected. But don't pretend it's not frightened. You want to say, if the child, especially a teenager, child is frightened now.
So Roni Beth,
sometimes.
Sorry to interrupt you. So it is 6:30. If people have a few more minutes, we'll just take a couple more questions. You can stay on if you'd like. We have a couple of great questions here I wanted to get to. We have plenty. We might not be able to get to them all, but someone said, thank you for your thoughtful advice. Wondering how I can help someone who is extremely fearful of coronavirus. He stresses when I go to the grocery store or order takeout. With every contact with another person, he counts 14 days waiting for one of us to get sick. It is impacting his small business financially by not taking on new business. I'm finding it exhausting to deal with my own anxieties and his anxiety.
Yep, that's exactly the relational thing that can happen. And I think the first thing I try to do is set limits around how much you can talk about it, so that you have time for yourself and you can stay in a compassionate place with your friend. Your first task has got to be to take care of yourself. You can't take care of anybody else. And we teach this in every caregiving class I teach for the Red Cross, every single class I taught at Yale or at Columbia, the clinical work, doing counseling, trying to help other people. You have to take care of yourself first. So you have to set boundaries around how much it can be talked about or how you're going to handle it. Do you live together?
Sounds like a yes.
Sounds like a yes?
Yeah,
A yes? Okay.
Yeah.
If you live together, then
Yeah.
you have to come to some kind of accommodation about how are you going to manage food. And he's going to have to find other ways to deal with this fear and other ways of coping. There are positive ways of coping.
Someone also
He
was
can
asked-
take one thing he could do is take on cooking.
Someone else was talking about, I can't go back, find the exact question, but someone was wondering about any advice for folks who are living alone, and you know, without, you know, someone else in the house, and any unique sort of tips for them in this time of coping, because obviously there are unique challenges there.
Absolutely. It is, loneliness is its own danger. And the answer there is stay connected. Connect to yourself first. Do things that keep you in your body, that keep you connected to yourself, and nothing does that better than movement and those basic self-care things. Good sleep, good nutrition, good movement, and connect to other people through the telephone, through the computer. But try to find, my friend who sends these funny things out every morning, she lives alone, and I think she really loves the fact that we are being connected, even if we don't have the eye contact, even if it takes a little while for us to see what she sent and to get back to her. But connect to people through media.
That's
If
great.
you don't have, you know what else is really great? Start a project with other people virtually. I don't live alone, but I actually have signed up to learn to teach, to become a virtual teacher for the Red Cross, to do the training for that. Even though tech is not my strong suit and I'm a little bit challenged in that area, but I'm going to do it anyway, because if I could get a PhD at Yale, I can figure out how to do that. Because it's good to work with other people on projects, and find a project you care about and work with other people. It's wonderful if it's not a coronavirus related project. It's also wonderful if it is. It depends on you and what your gifts are.
Okay, great. So does anyone, one of the reasons why we chose the meeting format is just in case someone wanted to, you know, participate via video. Does anyone have a question who'd like to just come on and ask us rather than doing it through the chat? Okay, so this is it. We're learning. I'm pretty new to Zoom, so we're kind of experimenting to see what people feel comfortable with and what people don't. So, yeah.
Just people to raise their hand.
Yeah. Well, right. I did ask that earlier, but no one. Yeah, we could do that too.
It looks like some people might be interested. They could raise their hand. Go to their name. We'll see a little hand command.
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, yes. Hi, Harry.
Hi. Are there any differences in the way that males handle situations versus females?
Oh, good question.
Oh yeah. Oh yes, that's group differences, and it doesn't necessarily apply to any individual male. I don't want to get into the whole gender thing, because that's changed a great deal, but there's a lot of data that men tend to go into the stress response, and especially to get angry. They do anger when they're frightened. They do anger when they feel guilty. They can do anger when they do grief. It's a go-to. It depends on when they were socialized, but especially men of a certain age, they were socialized to only have anger. Aggression was okay, but the other feelings weren't. So they needed to be okay that those other differentiated feelings are okay. The whole Shelley Taylor tandem befriend arose because we don't just have the drive system that allows us to get aggressive and want to achieve something or pursue a goal. We also have the soothing system. We have that whole right side of the brain, metaphorically, but the whole compassion system, the whole vagal nerve system, the whole caring about other people, the whole attachment system. That can go haywire too. And I have a slide on that, but there tended for many generations to be a difference, and especially in the Western religious traditions, of there to be a real divide between who men were and who women were, and what they could and what they couldn't do. And I taught psychology of gender at Yale in the 70s. Now that was when androgyny first came in. This was even before AIDS. I mean, this was a long, long time ago. But back then they were just trying to look at, well, no, we have people who are both. All men have a capacity for the compassion, a capacity to be caregivers. They're wonderful caregivers. And women certainly can achieve. We have seen that we have female leaders all over the world right now, just not particularly, not as president of our country, but we have a lot of governors and a lot in Congress right now, and there are more all the time. We have lots of female leaders. The doctors out there who are providing care, a lot of them are female. So yeah, there are differences, Harry, but we all have the capacity for both, and we all have the capacity to develop both. And unless we develop both sides of us, we're really cutting off a good chunk of our capacity, because that's who we are as humans. And uniquely, we want to be able to embrace all of who we are and all the feelings that we feel, sometimes all at once. And the more we can sit quietly, which is a blessing of being able to meditate, and runners have it too. You don't have to be still physically. And there's even walking meditation. You come to see the emotions come and go. They don't endure. They're chemicals in your body, and they will dissipate.
Thank you so much, Roni Beth. So Rita Watson just had a great comment. She actually said she wrote an article in the Psychology Today about 4 reasons to write what you feel as a coping strategy. So she's talking about how valuable this is, and how Zoom gives us a sense of connection. So I wanted to let everyone know that as well. Does anyone have any other questions? You can try raising your hand.
Can I say something to Rita?
Oh, sure.
That's my self-care. Every single morning, 3 pages, longhand. First thing after I'm up and dressed and moving. There's a huge literature that has amassed since we first discovered that putting things into language is a wonderful way to be able to deal with them. It's hard to deal with emotions until you feel them and until you can write them. And some days I'm not writing about what I'm feeling because my feeling, sometimes it's just whatever's on my consciousness. But it's another way of knowing, being in touch with what's going on inside of you. Rita, yes, journal. It's a wonderful coping skill. Love it.
I love this. Fantastic.
Well, thank you so much. So
Yvette, someone's
Yes.
asking if Roni Beth has a website or
Oh, yes.
contact information. Roni Beth, you'd like to share?
Oh, sure. I don't have it on the slides, but
Can you add it? Can you add it before you send them to me?
I can add it before I log off. It's www.miracleatmidlife.com. And that's it. I had to create one when I wrote the book, and the book is about another stressor, having a long distance romance, but it's about a 2-year courtship. And at the end of the 2-year courtship, I packed up 9 valises on my little white dog and closed my practice and moved to Paris to live on a houseboat in the middle of the Seine with the man who has been with me for the last 24 years and has been just changed my life amazingly. But that was a very scary thing to do. So it tells the story of doing something that was very challenging when I had an awful lot of demons and an awful lot of fears I had to cope in order to get from here to there, and how we went through them and learned to love each other. So that's what my book is about.
I'm just going to say,
It doesn't matter that you know the ending.
I'm reading Roni Beth's book. It's phenomenal. You must read it. You will laugh. You will cry. You want to hug her. Can you bring David in just to say hello?
David?
Because you got to see David in his Yale shirt. There you go, David. We applaud David.
Wait, yes, Roni Beth, start speaking so we can see his shirt.
Duck down, honey.
Well, there
you are.
There we go.
Go by the book and you'll know who David is.
Every year when we go through it, it says, where are you going to be on, I guess, last year?
Yeah,
Day 11.
last year.
And now they're into the second.
Last year we were in the Bronx helping it with immigration.
Right.
Yeah, right.
David's
we're into
not a
the
Yale,
second
but
decade.
we've all adopted him as a Yale. So he is.
I have been
Yeah.
adopted. Yeah.
He's
I
adopted.
won't tell you where I went to college or went to law school, but I am now adopted to Yale, and I'm even a Yale grandparent.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Amazing.
Well, thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you, everybody. Thank you so very much for giving your time, for sharing with us, for being with us, and for taking the time to learn about yourself and to take care of yourself so that you can help take care of other people and of our world, our poor planet. It's going to need so much as we begin to be able to repair.
Wonderful. Roni Beth, thank you so much. This was really terrific, and thanks to everyone for joining us. And we hope you all stay well and healthy and sane. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Everyone. Thank you. I want to thank Yvette. Hold on. I'm writing a check to somebody. I want to thank Yvette Rivers, who's head of the Yale Club of Washington, D.C., or Yale Club of DC, for hosting this incredible. I mean, this has been incredible. You have to do this again. And Roni Beth Tower. Oh my God, the whole thing. I'm in love with all of you. So please think about Chapter 2. We're getting a lot of comments from people who want more. Roni Beth.
Oh God.
So this is just the beginning. So think about what your next chapter for the webinar that Yvette can host for the Yale Club of DC.
Thanks so much, Lisa. And thank you again, everyone. Have a great night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Yvette.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.